We're going to talk about Adam Silver. We're going to talk about what he said. We're going to talk about this league. And we're going to talk about the fact that, unfortunately, the NBA found their smoking gun. Now, it's going to be up to the NBA if they want to pay attention to their smoking gun because there is one. And all the talk around this Clipper situation is, well, it's not like the Joe Smith situation because there ain't a smoking gun. Well, guess what? You got one smoking gun now. And as of 2 hours ago, you've got two smoking guns now. Okay, so let's listen to a little bit of what Adam Silver had to say, and then we'll talk about this.
We're constantly learning in the league office. Again, I'm reserving judgment because I don't know the facts here. I don't know what Kawhi was paid. I don't know what he did or didn't do. So we'll leave all that for the investigation. I think as a matter of fundamental fairness, I would be reluctant to act if there was sort of a mere appearance of impropriety. I think the goal of a full investigation is to find out if there really was impropriety, because also in a public-facing sport, again, the public at times reaches conclusions that later turn out to be completely false. And so I would want anybody else in situation Mr. Ballmer is in now, or Kawhi Leonard for that matter, to be treated the same way I would want to be treated if people were making allegations against me. So,
well, people are making allegations against you, but they're not of the criminal nature. They're more of the, lack of understanding nature. But let's talk about this. There was a request. We've already made 3 videos about it. I think they've all aged very well, if I'm being honest. My coverage of this entire scandal has aged very well. I said immediately that 28 million was not even scratching the surface. I said that this is not going to be good for the league. But in my 3rd video, I said that it was possible with how Ballmer and Mark Cuban had positioned themselves in this entire dispute, with the planting of the seeds of doubt about how shady, all the reports about how, Uncle Dennis had, asked for cap circumvention from every single team. It was perfectly within plausible, reasonable outcomes that Kawhi and Uncle Dennis went by themselves independently of the Clippers, which, by the way, is not cap circumvention. It's just bad business, to aspiration and said, give us this cushy deal or we will request a trade out, at which point they got the trade. And ultimately, the aspiration team, feeling desperate to keep Kawhi in LA to protect their investment in the Clippers, would have then put a contract provision that would keep him with the Clippers, because that's, for a lot of people, that's the shady part, right? Why is there a part of his contract that says he has to be a Clipper? And I think that was reasonable to explain with the fact, well, they're a Clippers partner. Obviously, they would want him to be with the Clippers. An example would be, if you're a Canadian company, right? Like, for instance, Scotty Barnes, to those of you who are Raptor fans, you know that he has a partnership with Skill Trade College. Skill Trade College is based in Ontario. So maybe they have a provision that says we will null and void your contract if you go to the Lakers. That makes perfect sense. The contract value is dependent on him remaining a Raptor. So I totally understand a local sponsor or a team sponsor wanting a provision that keeps that player in LA. The problem, and you know what? I wouldn't actually be surprised with all the New Balance stuff that came out, with how much New Balance wanted to push him into a media market like LA. I wouldn't be surprised if there's some sort of provision in his New Balance contract that says if you go to another market, if you get traded to Indiana, we're not paying you as much. I'm not even denying that that's possible, because there is a vested interest, if you're a sponsor, to keep him in LA. I totally get that. But this absence of a smoking gun, unfortunately, this is no longer the case, because now we do have a smoking gun. The first smoking gun was revealed a couple of days ago when, in December 2022, Clippers minority owner Dennis Wong, who is the partner and only partner in ownership with Steve Ballmer, he is a former college roommate of Steve Ballmer, longtime friend of Steve Ballmer, has come up with Steve Ballmer, personally invested $2 million into Aspiration, which at that time was defaulting on loans and laying people off nobody was investing in aspiration at that point. So why is it that Dennis Wong decided to invest $2 million into a failing company for very little of that failing company? It was less than 1%. It was less than 0.5% of that company. It was like a really weird investment. And you wonder why. Why invest in this failing company? Why invest in a company that is under investigation? Why invest in a company whose business model is failing? Well, in part, the investment is to infuse cash into a company that owes money to one of your employees. And so there's a $1.75 million check, let's say, owed to Kawhi Leonard. And Aspiration had defaulted on that several times. They had missed the deadline to pay Kawhi, and Kawhi's camp, specifically Uncle Dennis, were pissed. So what did the geniuses at the Clippers do? Did they, I don't know, just pay Kawhi themselves? That would have been smart. Just put $2 million in his bank account? Nope. Did they renegotiate his contract? No. No, that would have been too shady. No, they had Dennis Wong, minority owner Dennis Wong, put $2 million, $1.99 million into Aspiration so that they could meet their quota to pay Kawhi Leonard by December 15, 2022. Now, that's the first smoking gun. This is the first time where Pablo Torre finds out, can tie the Clippers directly to Aspiration as a means of paying Kawhi Leonard, because everything else is circumstantial, highly shady, highly suspicious, but not something that would hold up in the court of law. I think it's also worth noting that as much as David Stern, Adam Silver went out of his way to say that the burden of proof is on the NBA to prove that the Clippers did this, there's also a significant burden of proof on the Clippers to show that they didn't, because this is a public thing, right? The NBA is a public league. This is a public product, and you cannot have one of your biggest stars in one of your biggest markets accused of something like this and just brush it under the rug. So there is an element of, we got to show who did this because we all know something went wrong. So again, someone's going down for this. In my last episode, which was, almost a week ago at this point, I said that Ballmer and Cuban and Wong and all these guys are wealthy enough. The Clippers are wealthy enough, and Adam Silver is blind enough and perhaps corrupt enough to do this, that Uncle Dennis will take the fall. However, that was before we found the first smoking gun. And the second smoking gun was revealed a few hours ago by Pablo Torre Finds Out, which prompted me making this video, which is that Clippers majority owner, Steve Ballmer, invested a further $10 million, not in December 2022, but in March 2023, when Aspiration had all but failed. Investing $10 million of your money into a company that is that defunct goes beyond reasonable doubt. It goes beyond ethics. It goes beyond, we can just brush this under the rug. And now we not only have the minority owner, but the majority owner. I'm here to say this topic is done. The Clippers are done. I'll remind you, Adam Silver's first order of business when he walked into the NBA was getting Donald Sterling out of the Clippers. It marked a series of very progressive moves by by Adam Silver. Getting this guy out who was recorded saying these racist things was considered a huge win in terms of marking his commissionership. Commissionership? Is that a word? Sure. To then go forward and have his entire tenure now once again being defined by, what are you going to do about this Clippers owner? Because Steve Ballmer was the good guy. Steve Ballmer was the savior. Steve Ballmer was a super rich guy who was going to build a new arena and make the NBA more accessible and set a standard for what an NBA owner should be, and willing to go into the tax and willing to do anything to put a competitor. We don't like owners who don't care about winning. We don't like owners who, you know what I mean? Like, you put yourself in the mind of a Clipper fan. You got an owner out there who's fist bumping every single player. You got an owner who is the seventh richest man in the world. I've often said sixth. I apologize. He's the seventh richest man in the world, who's attending almost every single game and is more into the game than the guys in the nosebleeds. This is a good thing for the NBA. Would you rather that, or would you rather the super cheap owner who sits in the press box, doesn't say hi to anybody, doesn't seem to care about the game, is on his phone the whole time? I think most people would agree Steve Ballmer, pre-scandal, is probably a good look for the NBA. Super rich guy, seems down to earth, seems very humble, seems just like another sports guy. Seems like a guy you can grab a beer with. Oh, but you can't. But that's the illusion, man. I swear to God, I just watched a video yesterday of Bill Gates grabbing a hot dog, and someone said, I can't believe Bill Gates is grabbing a hot dog all alone. He's not alone. There's like 18 private security. You think Bill Gates is walking alone? How do these billionaires trick people into thinking that they're just average people? They're not average people. I got news for you. You don't get $100 billion by accident. You have to want $100 billion. You know, my grandmother used to tell me, in your life, you will have what you prioritize. When you look around, if you have a lot of family, it's because you prioritize family. If you have a lot of money, it's because you prioritize money. If you have a lot of health, it's because you prioritize health. You don't just accidentally get health. Nobody who's my age, 37, is accidentally healthy. You had to work for it. Nobody is accidentally wealthy. You had to work for it. This guy worked for $156 billion. He's not a normal guy. And right now, he's finally found a situation where money can't buy him out of the situation. Which brings me to my next topic, which is Pablo Torre. Let me say this kindly. I appreciate the work Pablo Torre has done. As someone who has done some journalism in my life, never to this level, never to the investigative level that he has, I love someone who does the work. But is anyone getting a little bit weirded out by Pablo Torre? Is anyone getting a little bit weirded out by the personality traits that are on display here? Is anyone getting a little bit suspicious of, what is the motivation? I read a lot about Pablo Torre over the last, few weeks, trying to understand. He's a Harvard grad. He's this, he's that. He's super smart guy. I've been reading a lot about this guy. This is a person who is very, very power hungry. This is a person who is taking every opportunity to rise to prominence and power. And it's a scary rise. It's a scary rise because he's taking a lot of people down. Now, we're okay with it right now because the people he's taking down are being shown to be, shady gamblers and adulterers or, cap circumventors and billionaires. We don't have a lot of empathy for them. So he's the good guy right now. He's the good guy. He's the good guy fighting the battle. And there's something that, the average person just loves watching billionaires suffer. Because billionaires are a stand-in for wealth, disparity, and I promise you there's barely a single person that I know who has any empathy at all for any consequences that billionaires suffer as a result of illegal action. They deserve it. Automatically. You're automatically guilty in the court of public opinion. If you have a lot of money, it really doesn't matter whatever you did. And there is sort of a, he's us. He's not you. You're not Pablo Torre. He has access to NBA executives. He is corruptible. He is extremely corruptible. I've seen this entire thing before. If you are anointing him the white knight, if you're anointing him like the savior who can do no wrong, if you're anointing him as the ethical one in this, trust me, this is a business move to elevate a podcast career. And shout outs to you for doing the work to do it. But I am not going to assume that this is out of the goodness of his heart. This is not out of the goodness of his heart. He's taken every single calculated move to make sure that he reminds everybody that he, not anybody else, not his team, he is personally fighting a war with a billionaire. I have studied a lot about psychology and body language and interpreting people's lies. It's part of the experience and knowledge that I use to dissect Fred VanVleet's bullshit and a lot of bullshit that's come through in press conferences and stuff. And quite frankly, I find it to be a very valuable skill to be able to interpret when people are lying. I feel that Pablo Torre is an extremely dangerous figure rising up. And while I follow the guy, I've watched his videos. So clearly I'm contributing to this. And I believe that what he is adding by taking down these billionaires is valuable. I would like to caution you to come back to this video in 5 years and see how this Pablo Torre thing plays out, because I've seen a lot of people rise to power using this method. And I'll give you an example, actually, from my own life, which is that I was born in the former Yugoslavia. And so it has colored and coded a lot of my understanding of people who appear to be too good to be true. And there was a man named Slobodan Milosevic who went down to Kosovo and used the plight of people in Kosovo and the frustration of Serbs and the guilt of Serbs who had abandoned Kosovo for greener pastures in other cities, and basically created a situation in which he was anointed as the hero of the Serbian people, and then used that power to ultimately destroy Yugoslavia. He was not a good guy at all. I don't care if there's any Chetniks watching or people who are staunch Serb nationalists. Miss me with that bullshit. It was a calculated political ploy. I am highly, highly suspicious of extremely political people. I am extremely sensitive to narcissists and narcissistic energy. And I am telling you, as you know, just an interpretation of my feelings watching Pablo Torre on various podcasts throughout, that over the last 3 weeks, I have gotten the strongest ever narcissistic vibes from him. So I say this to say, valuable ad, be careful. If you're going to trust, believe, support, be careful. Okay, that's all I'm going to say about that. To the point of Adam Silver. You know, I watched Adam Silver discuss marketing rights, league media deals, you know, local media, how local media is failing, media rights, you know, deals have to be reinterpreted, giving rights to big streaming companies that have obviously capitalized on the audience's propensity to want more control over their content. We're seeing more and more sports content veer away from cable television into streaming. And so, you know, a question was posed about, you know, and a lot of people have expressed frustration that, hey, I can't really watch NBA games. I have to have 6 subscriptions to watch NBA games. What gives? What gives, Mr. Silver? And I think Adam Silver responded to this comment about as horribly as humanly possible by saying, basically, the NBA is a highlight league and that these highlights are available for free, and that there's a lot of value being added by TikTok, Facebook, Instagram, YouTube, etc., where people are able to watch this stuff for free. Problematic comment one, because if the NBA is a highlight league and the highlights are what is valuable, then I have to ask, what is it that Amazon and Hulu and all these companies have actually paid for? What is it that you are giving away? Are you giving away fat? Is that what I'm told to believe? Is it that YouTube has free rights to broadcast your actual valuable games, which is the highlights, because the NBA is a highlight league, and Amazon is paying billions of dollars for the fat? No, the games are important, but increasingly, as we talk about the NBA, I think we've gotten into a very, very weird space with NBA discussion. It's become hyper individualistic. It's become very, very toxic. I think every single, and I say this as a person who's on PC, on the panel, a lot of the conversations on the panel suck, you know, and I wish they wouldn't happen. And I'm not talking bad about my employer. Obviously, I love PC, and I love the fact that in the context of these conversations, we can sometimes veer into some great basketball discussions. I believe in what PC does. I wish we could do it differently. And what I mean by that is, when an individual star fails, what do we rush to? They're overrated. They're not as good as LeBron. They're not as good as Jordan. Why? Why is this hyper individuation of the game even existing? Right? It's because it's easy to understand. Why do we consistently sink the game down to the lowest common denominator, aka the highlights? We should be striving to understand the game better. In fact, I think the game is more complex and, you know, in some ways in a better place today than it's ever been before. And yet I hear former NBA players like Lamar Odom saying everyone plays the same way. It's all, hot potato basketball, accidental basketball that Kobe Bryant talked about, and it's just not. I think there's a lot of beautiful stuff to be learned by watching the OKC Thunder play defense. I think it's revolutionary what they're doing. Their personnel, their roster construction is amazing. There's a lot of analytics that have gone into their approach to basketball, but there's also a lot of beauty in what the Indiana Pacers did, what the Toronto Raptors are doing, even what the Brooklyn Nets and Washington Wizards are doing. There's something to be gained from all of it. And to sum it up into dunks and layups and 3-pointers, this is a problem because we're talking about the growth of the game. The AAU is already a highlights culture. Do you want to do the same thing to the NBA? Well, then maybe I don't need to watch the NBA anymore. Maybe I need to go and watch Europe. And Eurobasket, which we'll discuss briefly, the final is set. And it comes down to two teams, Turkey and Germany. Prior to the Eurobasket, I said there were three teams that I really believed in, and this was, in the group stage when we had about 2-3 games each. I went on PC and I said Turkey. Turkey is like a team that is to be really respected. Obviously, I had higher hopes for Serbia. Being a Serb, wanting Jokic and Bogi to win one, I really did want them to win. Obviously, I'm rooting for where my heart is and my country, but I very quickly acknowledged that Turkey was a great team. Also acknowledged that Slovenia and Greece had no chance. And it brings me to a broader perspective of the conversation around team success almost always veers steadily into who has the better player. Fundamentally, a thing can be true without it necessitating the truth. What do I mean by this? Michael Jordan can win 6 straight championships, be the best player in the world, and still not be the only or main reason that his teams won, even though he's the best player. It sounds considerably crazy coming from a person who has, for the last 30 years, said Michael Jordan is the greatest player of all time. But bear with me. The best player between Greece and their last opponent, Turkey, was Giannis. The best player when Slovenia got knocked out was Luka. The best player in the Serbia game was Jokic. How is it that Serbia, Greece, and Slovenia are out? How is it that Turkey, with Alperen Şengün and his band of merry brothers, great team, deep? How is it that Germany, being led again, Alperen Şengün and Franz Wagner are not as good as Luka, Jokic, these guys. They're both 2021 draft guys. Neither of them were top 5 picks in those draft classes. How is it that they are able to be the best players on those teams? Is there maybe more to team success than having the best player? Yes. Yes. And I'm going to make a case right now, and this is something I've been thinking about for a long time, that NBA championships go to the team that has the third best player in the series. Second and third best player are the most important players in determining the outcome of championships, period. Go back through NBA history and the secret advantage, the Lakers dynasty, the mini dynasty that they had 2000 to 2001. What was Kobe? He was either the second or third best player in every single finals. Shaq was the best player. But when Shaq was the best player in the finals, you could lose. If the second and third best player played for Indiana, you can still lose because one player can be stopped. In my fraternity, in the early 2010s, I was part of a fraternity for Phi Delta Theta, and our slogan was "One man is no man." And it bonded us together, and it made us realize that the more we went our own individual ways, the more we failed as a collective. And I think that this is true for basketball. We're going to see it in the WNBA, where the best team is the Minnesota Lynx. But the hyper individuation element props up Asia Wilson's Las Vegas Aces. But Fee has the better team. But she don't get credit for that. Why? Her MVP case was over because her team did well in her absence. But if you're betting on championships, the Minnesota Lynx proved that they're an WNBA championship contender. And I think that what happened with Giannis against Turkey is historic. It's historic for two reasons. One, Turkey, or formerly Turkey, has not beat Greece in international competition since 1972, which, if my demographics are correct, is most of your lifetimes. This has never happened. So that was historic. Go watch it. It's amazing. Number two, no team in Eurobasket semifinal history other than one. So this is the second biggest loss in Eurobasket semifinal history. That's two. Number three, I don't think a player as good as Giannis has ever scored 12 points in a Eurobasket semifinal. Ever. I cannot remember it. Go correct me in the comments if I'm wrong later. But I cannot imagine a player as good as Giannis having this level of success. That's really hard to believe that a player this good could be shut down to the level that he was. 12 points? 12 points. They limited turnovers. They did everything. So what does it really come down to? What does team success come down to beyond who is your second and third best player in the series? I think it comes down to continuity, familiarity, defensive structure, team communication, your biggest weakness. Who has the worst player? In every single game that Giannis played over the last 2 weeks, his team has probably had the worst player. But his greatness overcompensates the same way Lucas overcompensates, right? There was a game that Serbia played against Czechia in which I very infamously said there's not a single player on Czechia that could possibly make the Serbian roster right now. And I was not kidding. And go watch it, go look at those players and tell me who on Serbia's national team will be replaced by those players. But even Jokic, Giannis, and Luka in shape can be beaten by themselves. And this is why you need to. You need to. You need that second player. And, most recently in the NBA Finals, it came down to OKC versus Indiana. And Jalen Williams was just great. He was great. When Shea was not great, Shea was not the most efficient guy in the NBA Finals. He just wasn't. I mean, he didn't have the type of MVP. I mean, this is a guy who had MVP. This is a guy, a scoring leader. This is a guy who's led the league in scoring back-to-back years. Did he look like that to you? No. I mean, one person can be stopped. In a 7-game series, single game elimination, everyone's trying their hardest. Scouting report is up. One player can be ganged up on. So it does come down to who is your second best player. And I think very often, if that second best player is considerably better than the other team's second best player, I think you have a really great shot. And I think if your group has been together a couple times, 3-4 times in deep playoff runs, which is what Germany has right now, right? Germany did great in Olympics last year. Germany has just been great for the last few years. Dennis Schroeder infamously said, either you're in or you're out. We don't care. Like Dennis, I've had a lot of issues with Dennis Schroeder over the years. I find him to be quite irritating, but he's right. He's right. For a national program like Greece, Canada, Germany, USA, etc., to have success, you don't just need star power. You don't just need the best player in the tournament. You need continuity. You need familiarity. You need guys who know how to play with each other. And that is the advantage that I think the USA will not have in 2028. Because the overwhelming talent gap that the USA has pummeled the world with for the last 60 years is just going to go slowly away. And I've heard, it doesn't matter that the top 5-6 players in the NBA are not American. The other, 40 are. We'll count those other 40, and they're not. They're not. Jamal Murray is a top 40 player. He's not American. He's not American. I think Amen Thompson is going to be a top 40 player very soon if he's not already one. He is also not going to be playing for America. He's going to be playing for Jamaica, right? You also have players like Franz and Alperen, and you're going to have more coming up. So again, as good as I think AJ DeBonsa and Cooper Flagg and Darren Peterson and Cade Cunningham and Scotty Barnes, potentially if he plays for Team USA, and Evan Mobley and Jalen Suggs and all these guys can be, unless you get them together every single summer, unless they commit, I think there's going to be an upset again. Just like 2004, there was an upset. I think there will be an upset again. I think Team USA has coasted for a very long time on the greatness of LeBron, Kobe, etc. I don't think Anthony Edwards is there yet, man. I don't think he's there yet. I fully believe he's the future of Team USA basketball, but I don't think he's there yet. So, yeah, I think that's important. We'll talk about some other stuff. First of all, shout outs to Ugly Cookies. becoming a member. Thank you very much. We are now 17 members away from hitting our goal in 3 days or 2 days. I think we have till Monday night, midnight to hit our goal as members. To the members out there, I promised I would do this, so I'm going to do it. Look at this. I have you covered. These are the official membership perks. So, to those of you who are wondering, how do I sign up for memberships? You go to the page. If you're subscribed, it's the next button over, join. If you don't see that join button, there should be a plus button on the subscribe. You hit there. You can join up to 3 tiers, and I finally got the membership perks for you. Chatter, Baller, VIP. Now, my incentive for memberships has been stated 15 times. I won't bore you with extensive details, but YouTube has offered $30 per member that signs up before September 15th or September 16th. So obviously, I'm pushing this. I want to let you know that I addressed this in yesterday's live. I don't want to be taking away chat privileges for non-members. A lot of members have spoken up saying we don't want that to happen either. We just want to support you. But I also, from a guilty conscience perspective, also want to add value to members. So here are the membership perks for Chatter, Baller, VIP. For chatters, you get a membership chat every single month, which pretty much doubles as a super chat. I have to pull it up on the screen. And, as I think over the next couple of weeks, for the people who signed up early, you're going to have access. So when you go to the super chat section, you're going to see membership chat. You can now chat once a month for as long as you remain a member. That's available to every membership tier. You get custom stickers if that's valuable to you, emojis and custom stickers. Next to your name, when you comment, you see a little sticker. I'm going to see if I can individualize those and make those cooler, but I'll work on that. Main page thanks. When you go to the main page, our main page, you will see our members at the very top. It says, thank you, channel members. Your name will be there. Does that mean something to you? I don't know. But if it does, it's there. And that's there for everybody. And the Sunday show access. I am working on a Sunday variety show in which I will discuss analytics every single Sunday. I'll try to make it very consistent, 4 o'clock, 5 o'clock around there, where I discuss that week's analytics profile for the Raptors, specifically main, storylines around the NBA. It's going to be like a 30 to 40 minute variety show. It will be members only. It is purely additive content. I don't want to hear anybody being upset that they can't access it because they're not a member, because this is new. And that show is going to be accessible to members. It's something that I can say thanks to. Ballers get everything chatters do, except they also get one more thing, which is a guaranteed comment response. You will notice that I make an effort to heart every comment that I agree with, unless it's just flagrantly, like something crazy about racism or shit that I can't heart that because I feel like I'm consenting to something that I don't agree with. Guaranteed comment response will be my vow that every single member, within, reasonable time, 72 hours, you will get a response. So any comment you make on these videos, as long as you are a member and there's that little star next to you, you will get at least a couple sentences or more from me. In terms of VIPs, this is where I think I can really do the most benefit for VIP members without taking anything away from anybody else. And that's the goal of how I constructed this. You get every single thing that the baller gets, except you also get a topic request once a month. Memorize my email, write it down. It's in every single show, pensarefilms@gmail.com. I know who the members are, the VIP members. There are 7 VIP members. Every single month, you can request a topic. If it's a great topic, if it's an absolutely great topic, I'll literally make a video about it to address it. If it's not a great topic or maybe a redundant topic, I will give you at least 10 minutes of discussion on that topic during one of the lives. It's the least I can do for our VIP members. It is a $34.99 a month subscription. So I think that it's a substantial, financial investment in me. The baller, I believe, is $5.99. Chatter is $2.99. To anyone who wants to sign up, you have 2-3 days, but if you sign up beyond that, it's great. Just no membership. I don't get a bonus for it, but shout outs to you if you do it. Okay. Justin Stewart saying topic choice is a good idea. I agree. Start a members only fantasy team. There's a thing at the bottom that says more perks to come. I'm working on it, man. I'm thinking about 2K. Okay. Fantasy. I don't like to do basketball fantasy, just to let you know. I don't do basketball fantasy, bro. I'm not trying to be condescending about it. I just feel like fantasy basketball ruins my mind. And I just start thinking about points, rebounds, assists, field goal percentage too much. And it just screws up like how I want to think about the game. So Overall, that's where I'm at with this, but I'm thinking about an NBA 2K, league. I don't know how to do it. I've never done it. I've never played online NBA 2K. But if there's a PS5 NBA 2K league, I don't know how many of our VIP members are members, but if we can just make a members only league and that's cool. Like, I don't know. Apex Glass on saying let's do a 2K league. Yeah, that could be cool. I'm gonna look into it. I'm gonna figure this out. I'm 37, man. I'm not the most tech savvy person on earth. So bear with me as I figure this stuff out. But yes. Okay. To summarize this video, despite our clunky start, I believe that the Clippers are screwed. I believe the consequence for them can be, possibly will be the defining moment of Adam Silver's commissionership to date. I believe that it is going to have to be a very substantial, because the court of public opinion is so important when it comes to things like this. It really is. Like, if you want to talk about how much you can get away with, think about what has had to happen for the league to take action. Aspiration had to fail spectacularly. Pablo Torre had to do 7 months of actual investigation into this topic. The Clippers and Mark Cuban, by extension of his friendship with Steve Ballmer, had to do an absolutely notoriously terrible job of handling this in terms of PR response. And oh, by the way, we had to find out in real time that the Clippers are really, 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 really stupid at cap circumvention. Because had they done this off the books, had they done this under the table, had they just sent money from offshore accounts, good luck subpoenaing, Kawhi Leonard for his bank statements. Like, it would be so hard to prove. You had to do this through a third party that became so bad, fell into fraud allegations, investigation, at which point all of their outstanding. And oh, by the way, another thing that had to happen for this to actually leak was Kawhi, the KL2 smoking gun that Pablo Torre found, that had to be on public record as one of their outstanding debtors, right? What if they had used the money that Ballmer paid them to clear Kawhi's debt? That debt would no longer show up on their list of existing debtors. At which point, your KL2 the company KL2 Aspire would no longer even be there. Now, how do you prove it? With the Joe Smith situation in 1999, the fraud had been going on for years. The cap circumvention had been going on for years. It took his agents falling apart for that to come to the surface. So the question becomes, is Kevin McHale right? Are there 10 teams that do it and we're just really bad at it? And if he was right, is he still right? Because he was talking about the NBA in 1999. Under Adam Silver, I think owners, players are becoming more emboldened. I think sports betting, all these scandals, it's just too much to ignore. And so I think the final topic of today will be Adam Silver's NBA. I'm a lifer NBA fan. I've been a fan of the NBA since 1991, which is about when I was 4 years old. That's as long as I can remember wanting to be part of the NBA in some capacity. That's as long as I can remember firing up NBA on NBC and getting really excited when I saw Michael Jordan. Okay, that's what I consider being a fan of the NBA. To be clear, I've never been a fan of the NHL. I've never been a fan of the MLB. I've only ever really, really been a fan of two sports: tennis and basketball. Those are my sports. Those are the sports I played. Those are the sports I cared about. Those also happen to be the sports that Serbs happen to be really good at. And sorry about handball, I'm not very good at it. And I'm not. Yeah, those are just the two sports I've only ever cared about. Those are the sports where I'm well versed, where I can actually play and I care. I can play rugby. I was on my rugby team, but I never really watched rugby. Never had the patience for it. So this is where the league has gone in my lifetime. In the 90s, I feel like the league was insanely popular because I think the storylines were better. I think the access to players, the content around the league is fulfilling my basketball fix more than actually watching the games. In 1990, the center pillar of basketball was the games. watching the games, seeing what would happen in the games. The commentary was just a perk. The radio shows discussing the game were a perk. They weren't main stage. They were side stage. They were, oh, you watched that game and you have some questions. You watched that game and it wasn't enough. But the game was the main thing. More so in Adam Silver's NBA and towards the tail end of David Stern's NBA, I've seen a shift where the games are no longer the main course. They're like for the sickos. You'll often see where we will be up on the main stage on playback, or some other content creator will be up. I don't even want to talk about PC because I think we do a decent job. Shout outs to Throwback Thursdays. When we watched that game last Thursday, Portland Trailblazers versus Los Angeles Lakers, even though that game haunts my nightmares and I knew how it was going to turn out. Chill, myself, and Ox were locked into that game the entire time. The entire time we watched every possession, we watched every single game. How many people are actually watching basketball that way anymore? Because when I was growing up, that was just how you watched the game. That was how you watched the game. You had to go to the washroom in the middle of the first quarter. You held it until the ad break, until the timeout. And then you ran, you sprinted to the washroom, you fought your siblings, you shoved them out of the way. You got into the washroom, you came back, you hit your seat, and you prayed that by the time you came back and hit your seat, that the game wasn't started again. And if you missed the possession, you asked what happened. Oh, Ron Harper scored. This level of intensity, it's partially just where human beings have gone. We just don't have the patience to watch a 2.5-hour game. So there's all these sideshows and, we're trying. Maybe it's the quality of the game itself, but that's not really even true. That's not true. Go watch a 90s game and see if you can pay attention. It's a little bit more repetitive, more. I don't think it's as good. I'm gonna be honest. I'm a player who came up with 90s basketball, played in the 2000s as well as I could play, and I think the game is way better today. So I think the game's in a better place. I do. I think the European influence of the game has been a good thing. So I don't think the game is worse. I think the people watching it are just worse at watching. Why is that? It's partially because the games are no longer center stage. There's so many people in this community who told me last year, they called in. They said, Rob, I'm calling in about the game. I'm like, okay, tell me what you thought. I didn't watch the game. Not judging. I'm not judging. I'm just saying, why? You love the team. Why don't you watch the game? Because you can just watch the highlights. I think the reason Adam Silver's comments about the NBA are so triggering is because they're true. We are a highlight league. The NBA is a highlight league. We're a highlight and hot takes league. And the nuance of watching quarters and possessions and caring about what's actually happening. Oh, the regular season is too long. Where does this come from? Who is the cart and who is the horse? Okay. Let's try. Let's try to explain this. One horse, right? And the horse and cart argument is mainly trying to say who's pulling who here. One horse could be this man right here, Adam Silver. It could be him. It could be him and the moves that he has made in terms of how the league is covered. Another horse could be the people who cover the league. People like Shaquille O'Neal, Charles Barkley. The loudest voices in this game are the staunch critics of the game. People who openly admit to not watching games. Stephen A. Smith. We have sincerely prioritized charisma, hot takes, the ability to talk about the game in a sensationalist way, rage baiting. The algorithm is wrong. There are hundreds, if not thousands, of basketball content creators who get 200 to 300 views but are actually discussing the game. And there are people who get millions of views who are ripping the game to shreds and mocking the game. Why? Ben Simmons is a bum. Is that the best way to understand what's happening with Ben Simmons' career? He's a bum. Joel Embiid is a fraud. Is that the best way to understand what's happening with Joel Embiid? We losing context because it's so much easier to label things. Is it the content creators? Is it Adam Silver? Or maybe it's the players. Maybe it's the players. Maybe it's the players who bitch and complain about the season being too long and what's the point. Maybe it's the load management, which solidifies, right? It solidifies that the regular season doesn't matter. If it doesn't matter to the players, why should it matter to me? I am now the fringe, man. I was the majority. When I was coming up as a basketball fan and I went to school and I discussed the game, we could all talk about that play in the second quarter. I was the majority of NBA fans. I am now the fringe of NBA fans. When I tell people I watch every single Raptors game, people are like, why? And they usually say it as in, like, oh, it's your job because you break down every Raptors game in a post game. So that's probably why you watch every single Raptor game. But they don't know that prior to Pensare Basketball, I still watched every Raptor game. The only year, 2 years actually, where I didn't watch full Raptor games, ironically, 1 year was the championship year. There was like 4 or 5 games that I missed that year. I was going through a brain surgery and it was a hard year for me. And I was really happy the Raptors won a championship, but that was a really tough year for me. And the other year was right after my mom died because I just couldn't watch basketball. My mom and I used to watch basketball together. It was a really hard thing for me to watch the Raptors. She literally died watching a Raptor game, you know? My mother died watching a Raptor game. I've never actually said that out loud, but in 2008, when my mother died, she was watching a Raptors game. So you can understand that that year, it was hard. It was hard to watch Raptor games. But other than that, since 2001, I've watched every Raptor game. I have vivid memories of every playoff game, every regular season game. I watched them all, man. Some of them I watched live. I watched them in person. These games matter to me. 82 games is a process, it's a grind. But, to the people who just want to watch the playoffs, what are you even watching? A team you haven't supported all year? But I think that the players have normalized this type of behavior by kind of petitioning that the games are just too many, it's too long. And so maybe the main culprit is not the players. Maybe it's the system and the world and the environment in which these players are growing up. Because I've never heard Michael Jordan. I've never heard Kobe Bryant. I've never heard Allen Iverson. I've never heard Kareem Abdul-Jabbar. Never heard Bill Russell, Bill Walton. I never heard any of the greats of the 60s, 70s, 80s, 90s say these games don't matter. But they also didn't grow up in the world that we grew up in today. And so maybe we need to point to social media algorithms, declining attention spans, and AAU basketball as the central culprits. Because again, there is a cart and there is a horse, and sometimes there is a horse that's leading a horse, that's leading a horse, that's leading a horse, and you need to get down to the real crux of what is happening. And I think if you look at what's happening to basketball, it's kind of what's happening to politics. It's kind of what's happening to religion. It's kind of everything's just politicized and packaged into a bite-sized thing. And through this, you get the rise of snappy edits, TikTok. You get the rise of highlight culture. You get the rise of an NBA commissioner who is very, very plugged into what people think about the league because that's what he sees. You have a commissioner who is willing to call his own product a highlight league. This is where we're at. And I want to push against it with this channel as hard as I can because right now I know I am fighting against the wind, but I want to unnormalize highlight culture. I'm going to get away from it because every single possession in basketball, not to sound like a totally lunatic person, I think there's someone out there is like, should this guy be on a ledge somewhere? No. Every possession is important. Every possession is important. Every defensive stop is important. Every play is important. Every point scored is important because when you talk about LeBron James being better than Michael Jordan or Kareem Abdul-Jabbar being better than Wilt Chamberlain, what you cite are the All NBAs, the championships, the points, and you know what? There's a person out there who watched every point of LeBron's career, every point of Kareem's career, every point of Magic's career, every assist of Larry's career, and that is richer. You get what you put out, or you get what you put in, right? If you want, I believe, if you want to improve your life, if you want basketball to be a meaningful thing for you, get away from highlight culture. It doesn't matter if it's normal. There's a herd mentality in most people saying, like if everyone else is doing it, I can do it too. Well, I'll quote my grandmother, if everyone jumps off a bridge, you doing it too? Preserve the game for yourself because every one of us has an individual relationship with this game, what this game means to us. For me, I just shared my mother died watching a Raptor game. My dad and I had our most memorable moments that I cherish because my father passed away when I was, when I was 12 years old. My biggest memories of my dad are are him teaching me basketball. And look where he brought me. My mother and I watched Raptor games because it was the only time we could connect because we had a very disconnected relationship. And it was the only thing we could talk about without getting into a fight. We could talk about the Raptors. And she didn't know a lot. She didn't know about basketball. She just knew that Vince Carter was good, you know? But it was something we could do together. Sometimes, families, we look, right? Basketball can be a cure. Watching entire games as a family, there was an article, Bowling Alone, Robert Putnam, right? He wrote this thing about America's antisocial problem and how Americans were considerably going into this loneliness pandemic. So, like, really, like, think about what I'm saying here. When you watch games, full games at a bar, at a, at an arena, in your living room, with your family, with your significant other, with your children, what are you really doing? You're creating an event in which you can exist in the same room with other people and get a very valuable social connection. When you watch TikTok reels and highlights, what are you doing? You're isolated by your phone. I've watched families in a car on a family trip. The father is driving on the road. The mother is on her phone. The kids are on their phone. The kids who are smaller are watching a screen. You're six people bowling alone. None of you are in the same world right now. Shared experiences are important. Your phone and the reels and the highlights are not shared experiences. What's shared is the barbershop. What's shared is the community. You can't lose community membership. You can't all be bowling alone because when you bowl alone, your life becomes hollow and meaningless and depressing. You talk about everything that's happening in the world right now, from declining birth rates to higher divorce rates to higher, the word unaliving rates, to higher depression rates, mental health distortions, drug addiction, whatever. You talk about all the problems, and when I'm telling you is that 50% of those problems go away if you have a family that you can watch basketball with. The hyper individuation, the lone star, the highlight culture. It's deeper than just basketball. It's deeper than how the game is covered. It's how your mind evolves through the content you absorb. My commitment to long form content, as I've mentioned many times before, is because I don't want to ruin people's brains. Brains are important. You need long term focus to accomplish every important thing that you're ever going to do in your life. From becoming an athlete, you need focus. Shooting 500 jump shots in an empty gym takes focus, takes commitment. You don't get to zoom through it like an Instagram reel. You can't do that. Becoming, successful, studying, getting a degree, getting your master's, getting your PhD takes focus. Increasingly, people don't have focus, and it's being bled away from you by AI, by highlights, by TikTok reels. My girlfriend will often watch like a really amazing video that's got like 1 million views, 2 million views. And she says, Rob, as an in demand editor who has every trick in the book, every graphic packs in the book, I am a good editor. I have edited 45 films. I am better at editing than the guy in Bangladesh offering, $50 edits to these popular YouTubers. I'm better at it. I can do it. I'm slow, but I'm good. I know what I'm doing. I can make a video that can go viral. I've proven it a couple times. I know I can. With the Nikola Jokic reel, I wanted it to go viral. It did. With the RJ and Scotty thing, I told one of my favorite content creators, who's a friend of mine, I'm like, I'm gonna make this thing go viral and see if I can. I can. I'm choosing not to make my videos go viral because in order to make them viral, I have to destroy your mind, man. In order to do that, like I just can't sleep. You paid a lot of money. That RJ video made over $1,000. That's good return on investment if we're using financial talk. It made over $1,000. I spent 8 hours. That's good money. And yet some of these videos, I'll spend 20 hours and make $50. Do the math on that. That's $2.50 per hour. I charge 60 to 80, 90, 100, 120 sometimes $150 an hour to edit a film. So I'm supposed to work for $250 an hour. Do you see my point? It's a conundrum. It's a constant financial versus ethical debate on how do you want to talk about the game. It's easy to be sensationalist. It's easy to label things. It's easy to hate on things. It's easy to, clickbait everything. It's easy to say the biggest. In a lot of ways, this title is clickbait. The NBA's worst nightmare just happened. But it's true. It's true. This is the worst nightmare because it's the beginning of the end. If you become a highlight league, your games are no longer meaningful. If your games are no longer meaningful and your highlights are free, then the money goes away. Stars go away. This is the NBA's biggest nightmare because they're facing some staunch competition from Europe, from European basketball. And increasingly, I'd say the EuroLeague and the WNBA have been a lot better run than the NBA for about 10 years. You continue to have the American advantage of just having all the best talent and all the best players. But what happens when you don't? What happens if, let's say, for instance, a Nikola Jokic, who wants his children to grow up in Serbia, decides, I'm going to go and play in Europe? Maybe not Serbia, maybe Spain. Maybe his family just wants to play in Spain. What happens when the best player in your league decides, fuck the NBA money, I'm just going to go over? He can do it too, by the way. He's kind of mentioned a couple times, like, don't be surprised if it does happen that he just goes to Europe in his prime. And what would that do for other players doing that? These EuroLeague clubs are wealthy. If they had a little bit more viewership from North America and the rest of the world, if Jokic and Giannis and people like this start going to Europe, you have a real competition for the first time since the ABA for who is the best basketball league in the world. That's why NBA Europe, they want to launch in Europe because they want to cut this shit in its butt. But you want to cut this shit in the butt, get back to the 90s, get back to all these games mattering. Because I'll tell you, every single EuroLeague game matters right now. And if you're telling me every NBA game doesn't, well, now you're telling me that the best use of my time is to watch EuroLeague games in full and watch NBA highlights. It's a sad day. It's a sad day. I think if the NBA went 1-30 and added regulation, the games would be way more important. I don't understand this comment. I'm sorry, I don't. Summer Low, can you please explain? I'm not trying to. I believe fantasy basketball sensationalized triple doubles. Triple doubles are also increasingly more rare as pace goes up. Shout outs to Errol John 9 for becoming a YouTube member. Appreciate you. We are now 17 away from our goal in 2 days of achieving 100 members. Thank you very much. Every bit helps. Justin Stewart, that's the topic choice is a good idea. Nameless, Serbian flags, shout outs. Pablo deserves credit for his work without having to question his motivation. The two things are two separate conversations. People can be extremely hardworking and also extremely calculating, political, and malicious in their intent. On like, you know what I mean? Like, there's a lot of dictators out there who worked really, really, really hard to fuck over like a million people to get to where they got to. Do I have to celebrate them? There's billionaire CEOs who are horrible for the environment, horrible for the world, that worked very, very hard to earn their degrees. You can vote, like, two things can be true. We can work hard and we can also be a douche. Okay. Carbon Chung saying, Adam Silver, just say the truth. It's purely about the money and profits. All the streaming services lead to more money. Facts. But sometimes you can be blind to the long game. And the long game here is, if the games are not valuable, the streaming rights go away because there's no value in streaming them, right? Good times do end. The Great Depression taught us that. The 2008 financial recession taught us that. The 2000 stock bubble, the tech bubble taught us that. Good times don't just last in perpetuity. Okay. Japan was one of the most prosperous nations in the world following, World War II. People were so fucking rich. I think you need to look into it. Look into how rich Japan was. It was like it never ended. They were innovating everything. They were creating everything. They were manufacturing everything. They had everything ahead of the world. Real estate prices in Japan were so insanely expensive. People were so wealthy. They were wiping their ass with money. They didn't know what to do. They were thinking about buying America. Literally, they were thinking about buying. People in Japan were so wealthy in the 70s, 80s, 90s. They were thinking about buying entire states, entire companies, American companies. Yo, Japan, a very tiny country, very prosperous. They're not so prosperous right now. The economics would tell you they're not very prosperous right now. Birth rates have declined to a crawl. There's a lot of depression in Japan. There's a lot of stagnation. There's a lot of, cautious spending. Yeah. Good times don't last forever, right? Whenever we think and this is where my financial history and, finance background comes in. And whenever you think something is too big to fail, it's not. It's not. You can't just pummel bad decisions down people's throats. At some point, your favorite content creator who gets 1 million views every single video will fall to 220,000 views, will fall to 20,000 views, will fall to obscure. It happens. You can only make so many bad decisions until the house crumbles. I mean, it's a big house, it's a nice house, it's very well enforced, it's huge, it's supported, it's got insurance. Okay, it can still fall. Tornadoes do exist. Okay, so again, I think the NBA has made a lot of really bad decisions. I think league expansion might be a good decision, but it seems from Adam Silver's press release or press conference that, ultimately Silver is not the boss. The owners are the bosses. The owners are his boss. He has to mediate. He's a lawyer, a fantastic one. And, he has to mediate the concerns between all owners and, steward the ship ahead of the NBA. I think the inmates are sort of running the asylum right now, to borrow that term. And I think the league is on some very thin ice with this commentary. I understand, again, largest media rights deal. Okay, cool. Look at the ratings. Look at the ratings. Look at the rankings. Look at all that stuff. Look at the discourse. Look at how we're talking about this game. Look at what the stars are saying. Look at the star interest, and all of this is leading up to the next CBA. And don't be surprised, right? Like, even if you look at the teams and how the CBA has completely fucked over. Like, you want to talk about competitive balance, right? You want to talk about like leagues having more competitive balance. When teams can only sign their stars and there's no money left for anybody else, that's when you have what happened with the New York Knicks this offseason. They've been able to sign so many good players and they've been able to boost their bench. You're not helping Toronto and Indiana and Milwaukee. You're helping New York. You're helping LA. In a lot of ways, helping New York and helping LA be competitive teams is probably good for the league. So, conflicting. Anyways, I want to give a shout out to everybody who tuned in. Shout outs to you. I hope you have a brilliant Saturday. I will also remind you that our season preview for the Toronto Raptors is coming out. We are going to be doing that. That is going to be a dope video that is coming out in tomorrow. I'm willing to say it's probably going to be tomorrow. So that is going to be coming out tomorrow, our season preview, where we break down the key things that have to go right, projections. I'm also going to do a Western Conference and Eastern Conference preview at some point over the next couple of days as we continue to push for our memberships. So those are the next 3 videos. Actually, there's 4 videos coming up over the next 3 days as we once again push to September 16th, our membership goal. There's going to be a video on the Raptor season preview, an Eastern Conference preview, a Western Conference preview, and also an NBA 2K rebuild. So I purchased NBA 2K26. I rebuilt the Raptors. I made some interesting moves that maybe traded away some fan favorites. And then there was some really, really bad news that happened in the first year. But the second year, I went further. I finally fulfilled Vision 6-9. And some good things happened for the Raptors. Justin Stewart said, can we have every subscriber give their Raps projected wins total just for shit talking purposes later? That would be a good call to action. So maybe in the season preview, I'll start that episode out by saying, please let me know, like, what is your thing? I've done that before on X. Run that 2K up for us, Pen. I haven't even seen it yet. Dope. Again, this is the earliest I've ever bought 2K, like in 10 years plus. I think the last time I bought 2K this early was 2K15. So this is crazy for me to buy it this early. To spend $100 on NBA 2K, given how often I find myself criticizing that the game is basically the same game every single year, is nuts. I think there was a year between 2019, 2020 where I just kept playing NBA 2K18. I just played 2K18 all the way from 2019 all the way to like 2021 until my girlfriend got me NBA 2K22. And she was like, you have an old 2K, you need to do this. But now there's actually the possibility to stream, games, previews, stuff like that. So I think it could be very interesting. Yeah, it could be very interesting. If anyone deserves the game, it's you, my dog. Well, I paid for it, so I don't know. They didn't send it to me. I'm not a big deal to NBA 2K. I don't know Ronnie 2K, so maybe I got to get in with NBA 2K and be like, yo, like give me a signed copy every year. I'm actually streaming your content now. 2K streamers are so huge, man. They're so huge. Like, it's nuts. I'll watch, people like Low, not realizing like how big Low and how Low got so big in this space, Legend of Winning and people like that. Like these dudes have been doing this shit, and I never watched streamers. Like, I never watched prior to becoming a streamer, literally. I have never watched another person play video games. I've never found that to be interesting, entertaining at all. Never even thought to do it. Never thought it existed. I never had a Twitch account. The only person I've ever watched on Twitch is Scotty Barnes. Ever. I don't know. I'm old, man. I'll talk to y'all later. Peace.